Do what?
Yeah.
Gives you.
I don't want to see us.
Look at that, huh?
No, we always have this.
Just like the rich people have.
That was pretty cool.
Oh, now it's gone.
All right. Good. All right, let's go ahead and call to order the Brainerd Parks and Rec Department regular park board meeting, Tuesday, November 26, 2019 at 4 p.m. at the Crow Wing County Courthouse, third floor on 326 Laurel Street, Brainerd. Do we have any additions to the agenda? None spoken, so we can move ahead to the consent calendar and approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held October 27th, 2019, and approval of the disbursements for the month of November 2019.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and motion carries. We could move ahead to old business, and Tony, I'll turn this over to you with the Children's Museum.
Okay. We have Mike Anglin here from Widseth, Smith, and Nolting, who will give a presentation of the conceptual plan of the Children's Museum at Lum Park. Bear in mind that a decision by the museum project people, they have not made a decision yet on whether it will be at Lum Park or maybe somewhere in Baxter. But I thought I'd like to have Mike give a presentation to give you an idea of what it's going to look like. If Lum Park would be chosen, there still remains the matter of funding a master plan, which will eventually be in the hands of the Personnel and Finance Committee with the City Council. So, but I'd like to have you guys updated and see how things, how you perceive this conceptual plan. And so I'll turn it over to Mike here.
Well, thank you very much, Tony. Again, my name is Mike Anglin. I'm an architect at Widseth, Smith, Nolting. And we've had the pleasure of working with Peter and others with Region 5 regarding the potential location of the Children's Museum. And so we've worked on this conceptually within the Brainerd community over the past couple of years, actually. So it's really exciting to see that it's still a very viable option for Brainerd, and also that there are plans to move forward with this. And so we were approached, I would say about a month ago, to potentially put together some ideas, put it on paper so that it could be presented to you all and then also to the City Council. So we met with Peter, we listened to his ideas, their thoughts about what this Children's Museum could be, what their vision was, and then we also had an opportunity to meet with certain folks with the City of Brainerd also prior to our presentation at the City Council meeting, which was on November 4th, I believe was when we presented that. And I know one of the key follow-ups, I wasn't at the presentation at the City Council meeting, but this was one of the key follow-ups, was that we'd be able to be in front of the park board. So what I have for you today is the presentation that we had at the City Council meeting. And so we'll just go through that. But if you have any questions as we go through the presentation, please shout them out and stop me at any point. So what we have on the screen right now that you can see is we felt that it was important in working with Peter in Region 5 is the history of Lum Park and what it has meant to the city of Brainerd. Outdoor recreation is one of the primary objectives of the Children's Museum. And so we just found it pretty fascinating when we go back and look at the history of Lum Park. You know, that is the reason why it's there. And one of the key components to that was for children to experience nature and outdoor recreation. So it's really kind of fascinating that all these many years later, that's the same vision that the Children's Museum has for the site. This is the historic entrance into Lum Park, which is still there in the southwest corner of the property. And so we included this image. It is quite grainy. However, we wanted to include it anyway. One of the objectives is to highlight the history, accentuate some of the historic elements that can be found on site. And what you'll see later on in the presentation is that, hello, Peter, is that this is going to be incorporated within part of the pedestrian connections. Peter, would you like to say any words as we get started here, or? Okay.
Just here to support.
Okay, thank you. I think we can move ahead to the next slide. So as you can see here, this is an aerial image of Brainerd, and the reason why we had this image is we felt that the location of Lum Park was perfect for this building and for the vision because of its connection with the city of Brainerd. It's important in a number of ways here. There's a large neighborhood in the northeast that's directly adjacent to that. This museum, one of the goals is that it can be very accessible to the community. And so from a pedestrian access, there are a large number of children that could, and families that could actually go to the Children's Museum through sidewalks, bikes, biking. And so as the city of Brainerd, what we're trying to do is capitalize on some of the recent efforts with walkable, bikeable, and a lot with the city parks. And so just looking at this image, also one of the initiatives of the city of Brainerd is to have connections with the Paul Bunyan Trail, Kainu Lakes Trail system. And then also with the Missouri, or the Mississippi Riverfront Committee, there's all these different initiatives that really speak to the same thing, and we feel like the Children's Museum at Lum Park could really, it's consistent with all of these different initiatives that are happening. And so as you take a look at Lum Park, again, strategically located, it has great access off of 210, a high traffic count there, an existing asset that the city of Brainerd has, and its historic structures. And so it's just a very, very strategic and very great location for this facility. So when we initially met with Peter, the next day we just went out and took some drone footage of this park. And so we did that not only from a presentation standpoint, but we felt that it was important just to get this really interesting bird's eye view. Beautiful time of year also, but so we're just including these images just so that everybody can get a good feel for how open certain parts of the park are, what does it look like from the lakeside, so we can keep going through these. So this image is actually a rendering that represents where the Children's Museum could be located. The important thing to identify here is that it is not to displace any of the existing assets that Lum Park has, but it's more to complement and enhance what's there already. As you can see, the positioning of I was going to use the pointer. I don't know where that went, but I think it's there. Thank you, Connie. Okay. So the location of the Children's Museum, as you can see in this location, this is where the current campground is located now. And so what we did was we took a look at this and we located the Children's Museum in such a way that it had close proximity to the lake, to some of the other existing amenities, and also some of this parking. But the parking would be more for handicap accessible parking for the Children's Museum, not primary parking for the Children's Museum. We're actually anticipating that the majority of the parking could be located in the existing open area or where Parks and Rec currently is housed. This concept or this idea is also taking into consideration that Parks and Rec will be relocating in City Hall for some of the positions, and then also down in Street and Sewer where the maintenance supervisor will be going down there. So what we had taken a look at is how can we repurpose this existing or utilize this existing infrastructure. And so that's what we had in mind anyway, is that the primary parking location would be located along the west. So then what that would mean is that it would maintain the amount of green space that is located here, and we did not in any way, shape, or form want to propose that we would be adding additional bituminous or pavement. Also with this concept is that with the campground, what we had identified at least a month ago was that could the campground sites actually be incorporated within this wooded area? So would this be an opportunity from a master plan or a long-term vision to enhance these campsites? And then also, can we repurpose the Parks and Rec building where maybe this is where you could pull in with your camper and campers could actually check into a building. And so maybe we could repurpose this existing building that the city currently has, and then this existing maintenance portion of the building, that could be some kind of an indoor rec area for the campground. So again, this idea is proposed with a long-term vision for this campground. The Children's Museum itself, between 30 and 40,000 square feet. One of the most important things that we wanted to do for Peter and his group, as well as with the city of Brainerd, was to give you guys an idea about the sense of scale that this building will have on the site. Oftentimes when anybody throws out a number of square feet, what does that look like, or what does that mean? You know, how much are we talking about? And again, the primary objective here is that this building would not take away, but it would enhance the park. Also, what you'll notice is that there are some exterior amenities here that we had identified. The Children's Museum and their vision has everything to do with children being outside as well and engaging in some of these outdoor activities. So the concept is that it isn't that there's a children's museum and then there's a big fence that separates the two, is that the Children's Museum would be integrated within Lum Park and become one of the many beautiful assets that are around the park. And then also that these new improved exterior amenities would just become part of the park, so that as you enter into Lum Park, visitors, day use, they could be enjoying the Children's Museum prior to even getting to the building. And then that would also enhance the park. It could be shared amenities with just the general public. So you would pay admission to get into the Children's Museum, but these amenities could just be shared and available to the general public. So the goal here was to allow for the Children's Museum and Lum Park to coexist together. The connection with the lake, with Rice Lake, the connection with the woods, the connection with outdoor recreation, it's just a perfect setting for this building, at least from the Children's Museum perspective. I think we can move ahead. This image is from the west, and so again, taking a look at this building maybe being repurposed so that campers could come in and actually enter into the campground here. So what we were also trying to look at is not creating a log jam, not creating a traffic jam, so to speak. And we could utilize some of this existing pavement for parking for the Children's Museum. This image also identifies that there could be some trail enhancement so that as you enter into Lum Park, you could be on your way to the Children's Museum and then you could encounter all these exterior amenities along your way. This image, again, just going back to the historic image of the historic entrance, we understand that this is part of the Frisbee Golf Course, but thinking ahead just to the connection with Cuyuna Trails and with the Walkable Bikeable Committee, it's just a really awesome visual, we feel, that connection with the neighborhoods. And so this is not, yes, it is a place, it's a destination for traveling in your car, but it's also a connection to the local community. And here's an image just at street level or pedestrian level. Okay. This image is from the lake, obviously, but the important item here to recognize is that the Children's Museum would not disrupt or want to occupy any of the existing space. This would be the main pavilion. This is the existing structure here, parking, fishing pier, and the loading dock, the boat landing. But then over in this area, there are some existing pavilions or picnic shelters that are in need of repair. So there are some amenities at Lum Park that, as part of the Children's Museum project, this would be a really great opportunity to enhance those structures, maybe replace them with some really interactive, fun things for families. As you can see, we're leaving all of this alone, which is the existing parking. So everything that you see here is not new, it's existing. Again, we're trying to basically present an opportunity here where we're essentially airlifting this building down. You know, we want to construct this or locate this in such a way as to not disrupt the existing park as much as possible. And Peter can, I think, get into more of the vision or maybe more of the specifics, but this boat, this playground equipment here, this is a bucket of worms, so it's all these things that are themed with introducing children and families into outdoor recreation. The design of the building itself, it's very preliminary, but we wanted to show you at least a sense of scale of what 30 to 40,000 square feet looks like. It's a 2-story structure. There's opportunities for learning about the woods. That's why it's nestled close to the existing trees here. It's about on the other side, there's an area for planting and growing food. And so it's just a very interactive outdoor learning facility. Okay. This is on the south side, so this shows that some very, very interesting exterior amenities that are in the works in terms of what the Children's Museum vision is. This would be some of that outdoor learning from a planting, gardening, local foods, and then this is a continuous, really the world's largest picnic table. That was some of the really fun components to the Children's Museum. But as you can see, it's lake to woods. That's a common theme with what they would like to achieve here. Some of the ideas too is that there would be designated dock that could be for an outdoor classroom type setting where children could learn about boat safety, watercraft safety, and so that could occur over along this side, kind of whereby the ski loons have their dock as well. I think I'm ready. This is an image, again, very preliminary, just a sense of scale of what this amount of square footage would look like. We're not assuming or making any decisions about the overall aesthetics of what this building would look like. This is the city of Brainerd's park. And so absolutely we would want to have feedback and input from you all regarding this. Again, this was very preliminary, but we did take a look at, I think we can go to the next image. We did take a look at the existing infrastructure that's there. Part of what's really interesting about this opportunity is that there is city utilities, city water, sewer, there's 3-phase power. It's actually located right there. And so the other really interesting thing about this is it's an opportunity to strategically locate the building not only from access for Brainerd residents, integrated within an existing park, but it's also, we're not extending infrastructure, half a mile out of town, or we're not putting any additional burden on the city of Brainerd, at least in our opinion, from extending utilities. So it's just really setting up to be a really great opportunity for this building to be located there.
Got to say, that's a pretty impressive rendering. All the shadows on the windows and everything. Someone did a nice job with the rendering.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to put together an image. This is just a shot at night, what that could potentially look like. Here's just another image again, and we're talking about locating the building within this area, campground, moving more into this wooded area. We have had some opportunities to walk the site, talk about more about the feasibility of that, and so we understand that there's some low areas that have water. But, again, it's just trying to enhance what's there, try to utilize some existing asphalt and repurposing of existing structures, just trying to maintain the character and everything that's there at Lum Park. I don't know, these are just fun to look at, in my opinion. Drone images, but go ahead and go to the next one if you can. That's it. And we did do an animation of this, and the reason we did that is to just give an example of what, from your car, this is how you would get to the Children's Museum. You would go through Lum Park, these mature, beautiful trees, this setting. Off to the left-hand side here, you'll see the existing pavilion. Every car here, these are existing parking spots. And then as you get closer to the Children's Museum, you're starting to interact with some of these exterior amenities. So it's not just that you're parking next to a building and then you're walking through a door. You're experiencing the Children's Museum and Lum Park simultaneously until you get to the entrance. Some of the other opportunities here is that there could be some shared amenities, including potentially restrooms, or maybe there's something within the building that complements Lum Park that could also help you out from a city parks and board. So a lot of partnership opportunities here. We are working on another project very similar where we understand that there would need to be, from a staffing standpoint, hours of operation. You know, there's a lot that goes into something like this, and so we understand that there's a lot that goes into it, but willing to investigate that with you and move forward. And I'd love to answer any questions, or Peter, if you'd like to add to the presentation. Okay, great.
And we do have Peter Olson, the project director for the Children's Museum here as well, so.
Do you have any better idea what the timeline of the decision is at?
So timeline of decisions, I would say, I think the presentation we had with the city council on November 4th was critical just in terms of, I think just maybe moving the process forward a little bit, again, just to get some ideas on paper. And then the next critical step is to agree upon, I think, what that master planning process would look like. And Peter, maybe you can offer some additional information on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that summed it up very well. That if you all are entertaining the thought of going into master planning, and if that's something that could commence this spring, sometime after the beginning of the year and the new fiscal year for the city, and come up with some sort of joint task force between whoever the city and the park board, Tony, would want on that, and then we'd have some representatives from the museum, including myself, and I would assume there'd need to be some city would have some specifications about how to put that out for an RFP. If it's a public project, but and be able to, take the time we need to really think through how the museum could fit into Lum Park. Are there any additions or upgrades, or how do we just really make sure we're not displacing any audiences out of Lum Park who are currently using it, but how can we just make it as seamless and as beneficial as possible to have the museum in Lum Park. So if we went into that this spring, maybe by the summer we could have a good master plan in place. I think for us, for the museum, we don't like to put dates out there on when we think the museum will open, because all you do is blow past those dates. There's so many unknowns, but we are going into our feasibility study right now on the capital campaign. So that'll be done this spring. We'll have an idea of how much money we think we can raise. Then from there, it could be a couple years. So if 2022 would be sounds really good if we really get at it and get to work. And I know our board, as far as picking the site between Lum Park and the Potlatch site in Baxter, I think they're getting pretty close. I think that council meeting was a great indication. And if you all agree to move into master planning this, the beginning of the year or whenever, I think that our board could come to a decision pretty quickly.
That was kind of my question in the short term, is the site picking, when will you know which site it is, and then follow through with all of the other things that you mentioned.
Yeah, we do have a board meeting on the 4th of December, so coming up. And it's going to be a topic of discussion. We have it on the agenda to discuss, really put up on the board all the information that we have on the two sites for all of our criteria. I don't know if they're going to make a choice at that board meeting or not. They could. But that'll be our next step, December 4th.
Thank you.
I will say part of the process that we've discussed, and again, based on another project we're working on, is the public input. And so we do understand that part of this would be listening sessions with the community as it relates to outdoor recreation, the current use of the park. And so the National Loon Center is the other project I'm referencing. And so we are working with the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Defense. We're working with the DNR, and we're also working with the National Park Service and the city of Cross Lake. And so there are a lot of different entities that need to weigh in on that. And so from an operations standpoint, from a funding standpoint too, but opening up to the community is an important part of this as well. And so that's part of the conversations that we've had internally, and would anticipate that would be extremely important for this as well. The number of visitors, what does that mean? Parking. I mean, those are some of the very important aspects of this. What does that look like on the site? And that's why we've really thought that through, and the connections with pedestrians. And again, combining that with all the different initiatives that the city of Brainerd are doing right now, it's a lot of information and just a lot of collaboration that we anticipate will be part of the process.
I have a question. What is the proposed cost of the master plan and who pays for it?
So we would like to, part of what we thought we would do is just identify what you would like as a scope. Part of that could be, again, looking at the number of visitors to this site, so a traffic study. So that would be around $8,000 to $10,000 just simply for that. And then it would be those community engagement, it would be those meetings, it's facilitating those, putting together some more graphics, potentially taking it a little bit farther with utility information and some of the feasibility studies relative to that. So we were anticipating around $50,000 or so, and it would be a shared cost, at least is what was discussed. I don't know if it was talked about at the city council meeting, Peter, I wasn't there, but that's something that we need to just identify what that scope is, what your expectations would be, so that you feel comfortable moving forward with something like this. I know that the Mississippi Riverfront, they're currently working on something very similar, and I was thinking that was between 20 and 30. Am I right in saying that? That's what I recall anyway. But I would think something on this scale, including a traffic study, things like that, maybe around 50. And it'd be a cost sharing opportunity there. But again, it's a very loosely defined scope of work of what that master plan would be at this point. Important part about today is what you all would like to see as part of that process.
And where does the money come from to pay for that study?
Right. That, I don't know what that answer is, other than it would be coming from the client or the owner here, and then from the city's standpoint, I can't answer for that.
So we did have our budgeting workshop last night, and the subject did come up. There is support from the council to do something, but without knowing what the ask is going to be, it's tough for us to set aside money.
Sure.
So right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern, waiting to hear what the
Sure.
position's going to be. The other concern that people had is, are we going to be setting aside money for something that's not going to be used in our town? So that did arise last night. But there is support. There's support from the council as far as a dollar amount. We haven't had an ask, so it's tough to put
Right.
it's tough to put a pin on that.
Sure.
So
And what we can do based on, again, our recent experience, is identify, so from establishing what a lease would look like, or however the city would feel comfortable with that, we can identify a certain scope of what would have to be discussed with that. And then, again, just whatever jurisdiction would weigh in on. I think we talked about if there is going to be a dock, how will that be installed? Where would that be installed so that it's consistent with the other uses of the park? So depending on if you would have a committee maybe that would, or maybe it's the entire park board, but I think that just having a meeting to try to establish what that scope would be is certainly a great way to define what that is, and we could absolutely provide you with that and a price that would be associated with that. I would anticipate the traffic study is something that will for sure be required by Crow Wing County. I can't speak for them, but usually when we discuss a project like this, there's an impact on traffic. So there will be more cars entering into that site. So I would feel very confident that would be part of it. And again, just working through the hours of operation, just in the lease arrangement. So I think just talking through that, having a brainstorming session with either all of you, or maybe there's a select number of you that may be on a committee that works on this. So that would be my recommendation, and we can just bring to the table what we're currently working on another project.
One way to look at it would be just, if we think it's gonna roughly cost 50 grand, if, do some level of cost sharing up to 50%, so the museum could be on the hook for up to 25,000 of it if you all would put in 25. This is a big round numbers. The more the city puts in, the less the museum puts in, the more we're able to put towards, let's say, park amenities like handicap accessible playground equipment, etc. But I'm pretty sure, I'd be more than happy to take an ask to my board of directors to commit to 25,000 or 50% of a potential. And I'd say too, with that, knowing that the city has the intention of putting in, at least 25 into the master planning, I'd be in really good position to ask the board to make a decision on, let's choose the site. Again, I can't guarantee they're in that spot to make it, but I think showing that Brainerd's level of support really does clear things up for us and potentially would help us to make that firm decision.
If I may again, so last night the conversation drifted from, what is the number going to be? Are we looking at 25? Are we looking at 200? And I think there was a lot of pushback when we started getting to the higher end of things. But if we're looking at a smaller amount, 20, 25, there's definitely support there from the council. But again, we're going to have to know what, if you're looking at two different sites, eventually you're going to have to pick one. Yep. Because if we're going to be throwing money at it, we can't be throwing money at master planning something that isn't going to happen.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand that. So it's, the site is chosen, then the master planning, feasibility study, fundraising. Is that right?
Yep, that's pretty
Okay.
much it. It's a little
And that would,
overlap, but.
to clear up your question too about where the money would come from, that would come from the council's
Right.
side of things. So
City
it wouldn't
side.
be, it wouldn't be associated with the parks budget.
On the master
But
plan.
it would be a separate item from the city's
I
budget.
get that, yep.
So what you're looking from us for is just approval of a plan that may or may not exist,
Kind of, yeah.
basically, right?
So I look at this as a presentation. This is different from the last time that we met with you. I think the last time we talked, we kind of talked about the building going where the current buildings are. So to me, it's very informative. It's nice to look at this. It was a nice presentation to kind of see where, how that would lay out. And, but I think it kind of comes back to picking a site, and really nothing that we can do other than, me personally, I think it's a great asset to our community. I like the idea, I like the concept. So we're just kind of waiting on which site you're gonna pick, and really nothing happens until that's done, correct?
Well, one of the things we've been talking about with representatives of the council has been, Lum Park makes sense to us if we do go into joint master planning together, because we feel like the potential for what this could be is just astronomical. Like, the impact could be really incredible if we plan it out together and we're really thoughtful about planning. So that was something that our board of directors was looking for, was that indication that, yes, Brainerd would be willing to go into master planning with us. They'd put some skin in the game in terms of paying maybe half of the master planning expense. Then with that indication that makes it a lot easier for them to select the site. If we aren't going to go into master planning, if, the indication is, no, the city, the park board wouldn't be interested in going into master planning, it just changes the equation for Lum Park for us. So we are putting we are putting the cart in front of the horse a bit, asking you to kind of jumble things up a little bit. But I do think we are getting really close to being able to make a site. It's sounding like the city has support, maybe not a full vote yet, but has potential support for that range of master planning that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if you came back with a number that said 20,000, I think you'd have pretty unanimous support. If it comes back at 100, you're going to have wavering opinions at that point. So, and that's just me speaking based off of what the feel of the room was last night.
Yeah.
So tonight, what you're looking for is a motion for us to kind of approve the conceptual plan, to present it or to turn it over to the planning finance committee of the city council and have them essentially be in contact with you and have them talk about the 25,000. That's really our only role today, correct?
That's a great way to summarize it, yep.
I will say the only other thing to add is that it's also our opportunity to present it to you, and we respect the park for what it is now, and we did take some creative license to place the building in a different location, and that's based on just some internal conversations that we've had. But so I think it's an opportunity to get in front of you in person and do that versus just maybe you seeing this information secondhand. And so we appreciate that opportunity to do that. We did present it to the city council, but again, we just want to be respectful to the existing use of the park, this proposed new use. We hope, and our objective was to show this in a way to enhance. So that was the other, I would say, important part of tonight, was just to get in front of you all. And then also I'll just go back to the master planning and trying to define that scope. In working with Paul Sandy with utility information, Brainerd Public Utilities, and with you, Tony, as well, just walking the site, talking about the existing campground. I will say that we've done quite a bit from a feasibility standpoint. So from a master planning, if everybody at least feels somewhat comfortable with the direction it's going, I do feel like we've achieved quite a bit already. So when we're trying to identify, what's that dollar number or the overall scope, I think we'll be able to really do it in a very efficient way. And again, I think it's just working through the lease agreement. What does that look like? And so that's just whatever your guys' comfort level is. And maybe that's something that is just separate between you and Region 5 here. It's not necessarily part of master planning. So I think we could really narrow that down to a really well-defined scope of what the master planning process is. In my opinion, I think it will be more community engagement. I think it'll be more to do with that. We can certainly revise our renderings and drawings and site plans to show how we can modify things maybe based on input we get. But I think it'll just be mostly that time with the community and with you all in terms of how do we want this to work? How do we want these two entities to work together on this park?
I have a question. So can you tell us what is the choice between? So I feel like maybe it's money related or no? Is it money related? So if Brainerd gives more than Baxter, or is it like the site location, or what would you?
Yep. It's there's, when we put out the RFP on the site, there's like 13 criteria that we're prioritizing and really looking at. So it's a lot of information on both sites that we're looking at. And they both just stack up really well. We did some real significant analysis between the upper part of the region for us, like Pequot Lakes and the sites up there, and the sites down here in Brainerd and Baxter. And the sites down here rated much better in terms of population, proximity to young children, diversity index, all these, proximity to children and poverty, all of these drive times, the Brainerd Baxter sites rated much better. And so now we're just trying to figure out between the two, number one, which one is the most ideal for children. That's our number one criteria. And then number two, which is most likely to be fundable? Which one are we going to be able to raise money and get built? And that's where having this public show of support from the city really does help with further fundraising. That's always been the case at the other museums that I've opened. Having your city's support helps others to feel like, yeah, the city's behind it, I can get behind it. So that's a big part of the discussion. And we've been meeting with folks over in Baxter and talking over there, and we've been talking with the folks here, and I think we're getting really close. And they're both great sites. They're both great sites. So it's really a win either way. So just, yep.
The one thing I think we need to be clear on too is that Baxter is not involved in this. It is a site within Baxter, but it is Potlatch's property.
Yep.
The property is not a Baxter thing, and actually Baxter has spoken, if I'm not mistaken, as though they're going to treat this as any other development. So from their standpoint, they're not even really involved in it. It's a site between a Potlatch property and then the city of Brainerd has offered up property. So that's why we're involved in it the way that we are.
And that's kind of a question that I have. At what point does the park board no longer have input in this process once it starts? I mean, do we reach a point in where we effectively hand over the keys on this project to you and we don't retain or relinquish control over design, budgetary concerns, all of those aspects? Because I can see a difference in what you're describing between that piece of property and us, because I'm assuming that we would have something to do with maintenance, ongoing, some type of process is there. So I guess what I'm getting at here is, if we say, yes, these look great, is it City of Brainerd and the museum takes off and runs with runs with Lum Park? Or do we stay actively involved in design, budgeting, who's going to man it, who's going to pay for it, all of those aspects? When does that control hand off? And maybe it doesn't. That's what I'm asking.
That's a big question, and David, feel free to jump in on that. But I would think one scenario would be we decide to make it a state bonding priority. If we were to go down a path like that, where the city is deeply involved in that capital expense, it would certainly be a very joint project around designing and getting to the scale and scope and everything. I think another way to look at it is that as a children's museum, we really understand young children and families and field trips and our audience. So we really understand their needs, and designing for young children. Our median age very well will be about 3.5, so young. So we'll, most likely in any scenario, retain leadership. We'll be driving the design of the building, but for sure we want you guys involved. I mean, you guys know the park better than anybody, and recreation and Tony's expertise and all this stuff. And through master planning, maybe that's getting ironed out, because I think that's a really good question. Where does your role end and where does ours pick up, and how do we have approvals and all this sort of stuff? But if we set up master planning, that's sort of, down in Baton Rouge, we called it a cooperative endeavor agreement, because the Children's Museum was in the park system, and did a document that laid out all of those stipulations on who approves what, who's responsible for what.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think from the standpoint of giving up ownership over it, the agreement would be that they're the property owners. So once we get past the designing phase, then our end of things gets removed. We're basically just a lease agreement at that point.
So we're not worried about snow removal and
Well, that's
parking lot maintenance, that
a
kind of thing?
part of what we had talked about was the using of the existing road structure that's there instead of creating parking so that snow removal would be a part of the process. We actually talked about extending the road itself so that we can just have it be a road that's being cleared out through snow removal. There'd be a little additional cost to that from the city standpoint, and that's all stuff that we have to talk about from a lease end of things. But in the design portion of things, the building itself would more than likely be under their control completely, but it would be the layout within the park that we, from the city, would want input from the park board.
And they would lease it from us, whether it
It
be
would
a
be,
dollar a
yeah,
year
it
or
would be
whatever.
a lease agreement. Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a special guest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jim Thoreen, the interim city administrator. The discussion that's just occurring, in my mind, I mentioned the county, I should have brought my copy of the city charter with me. But the city charter is quite explicit about the duties of the park board. And I think it would be well for you to review that before you start entering into anything should it come about. I want to, and then again, you may want to consult with our city attorney to make sure you might be able to construct an agreement that with which the city is legally comfortable and with which you as the park board is comfortable. But I think that needs to get reviewed before, and I'm not trying to put a damper on the project. Just make sure we touch bases with what you're outlined to be and what you authority. You have a lot of authority under the city charter. And unfortunately, as you maybe know, you don't get a lot of chance to raise a heck of a lot of money. But you do have authority. And the project is worthwhile consideration, but I think it would be good to pause, and I could even ask the city attorney to give us a readout, if you will, on what authority do you have to act, and in either an advisory capacity to the city council or independently as the park board. So it's just one of those cautionary things that I think need to be, for us to be looking at in terms of authority to act and when and how. So, make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
I guess based on the discussion that we've had here, I'm thinking that I want to make a motion to approve the conceptual concept that was presented to us and have the funding be sent to the Personnel and Finance Committee to have further discussion as to whether they support that or not.
That sounds reasonable, Dell. Did we have a motion for that? Do you have that, Kim? Do we have a second? Or any other discussion? Because what I'm hearing is obviously nothing happens until a decision is made, and then, obviously city council has to be involved, and but I would suspect that we would be involved in the park layout and making decisions on the park layout and how things would go throughout that whole process. But I don't know that this motion ties us into anything other than we agree with the concept and to move forward and look at things when a decision is made. Am I reading that wrong? Is that?
No, that's the way I look at it, yeah.
And again, for an hour, we don't really have, we have a coin flip's chance of either getting heads or tails on the project, but right now all we're doing right now is approving the authority to move forward and see what happens next.
And sending it on to the city council to take a look at whether they want to. If the city council says they won't fund any of that, of the planning, then it may or may not be a dead issue. But from our perspective, all we're doing is saying, let them decide. I mean, if we're okay with the concept of having the museum in the park, if we're okay with that concept, then moves on to the next step. That doesn't mean given away all of our rights. We haven't
No,
got to that point.
and much to Jim's point, the park board has control of the parks. You have pretty carte blanche control over the city parks. So once this moves forward, it would be back onto you or for you to create a subcommittee. That's more than likely what the city would like to see. We may ask to have the liaison sit on, i.e. myself, as well, but it would be a park board-driven project from that standpoint, as far as controlling or being involved in the master plan. And I am also the chairman of the finance committee as well, so that would be coming to my committee if that's what you chose to do. I don't know what kind of action we would take on it as of yet, because like I said, we spoke about it last night, and it's still up in the air as to what, until a site is selected, it makes it difficult for us to then commit to putting money to something that, that may or may not be coming towards us, but there is support towards it. And if you show support towards it, then bringing it on to personnel and finance is not a terrible decision. It at least moves the ball forward another notch.
With the council hoping to set the 2020 budget by December 16th, is this something that we should be getting on the PNF committee meeting next Monday, or a week, 2 weeks from then, or what do you think, Dave?
So next Monday is an actual council meeting, so that would be PNF. Our truth and taxation meeting is the following Monday, the 9th. And then we will be adopting the budget on the 16th. So we're moving along very quickly here. So if you did make the decision to support it, we probably will put it on PNF anyways, just as a discussion point. But if you move it along from here with support, that will definitely put it in a different chamber than just a standard discussion, so.
Well, Jim, now you're talking about having the lawyer take a look at the plans. That will be after our initial thumbs up to move this plan forward? Or should that be before our initial
I think he was talking
motion?
about our authority as a board.
Your authority, the plan itself does, the attorney might be interested in it, but frankly, he's gonna be looking at city charter, state law if applicable, and I don't know that it is, but that's, we make sure we're following the charter's procedures. And that would be my concern. And I don't think you're on a bad page here. I'm just saying it's another notch that you need to be considering as you move along.
We're basically committing to the exploration, to continuing the exploration. Is all we're doing. Paid for by,
Money, no. It's just, we're interested.
Yes,
Right.
That's
Okay.
exactly it.
All right.
Well, then I would second that motion.
Oh, yeah.
so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Will you make sure that Connie's
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
thanks for your time.
press that forward to her?
Good luck with flipping the coin.
She's sitting here.
Oh, is she?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, but I'm.
Go,
want
Brainerd.
to deal with the park board, we
Yeah,
got
well,
private
since-
property. There's-
Hey, Connie,
Right.
since you're here, can you make sure that we put that on our next agenda? Okay. And then speak with the attorney as well.
Yeah.
Connie, do you want me to write that up, or you?
I think it's going to be a joint effort between myself, David, Jim, you. I think it's going to be all of us.
Okay.
Just bring the checkbook, you'll be fine.
But do you want it for next Monday's meeting?
It is on Monday's agenda, preliminary.
Okay. So we need to have that by noon tomorrow.
Yeah, you do.
Yep. Type fast.
You make a good parent.
Again, thank you, guys.
Oh, my gosh.
I saw the wheels turning over there.
I know.
We
like-
can move
She's up to
ahead
something.
with discussion of youth baseball.
Okay, at the last park board meeting, we did discuss the, looking into potentially joining the Brainerd and Baxter youth baseball competitive programs. And I did take the opportunity to meet with Community Education Director Corey Reynolds, and Joe Polkamp, who runs their baseball program, was attending the meeting as well. The Baxter Parks and Recreation Board and the Community Education Department, they meet twice a year, and they so happen to be meeting in November, and they took that discussion points to the joint meeting. And they did ask that I wasn't there so they could kind of maybe speak a little more freely and whatnot. They did inform me following the meeting that it almost brought up more questions than answers. And judging from the email I received, I think they were a little mistaken that we wanted to look at handing all of our programs over to community education, which is not the case in this situation. We're just looking at combining the competitive baseball. Corey Reynolds also, while I was at the meeting with her and Joe, she did explain that the way they have the program set up through community education is that community ed, they take all the registrations, they purchase the uniforms and equipment, they schedule the games and umpires, they sell sponsorships, they sell the advertising, and the city of Baxter maintains the fields but is not compensated for doing so. And that is their agreement, is that how that is written up. So basically, we kind of got nowhere on that discussion. So maybe the board would want to talk about that a little further on our end, or wait and see if we get some more information out of them. And then meanwhile, we have representatives from the Brainerd Lakes Area Baseball Association here, and they would like to discuss some matters. And just to let you know that our park board president is the president of the BLABA, to shorten it up a little bit. BLABA, okay.
Many hats you have.
Labor.
Yes, so turn it over to you, Troy, right now.
Okay. So we have Derek Owen as a chairperson of our board, and Zach Heidemann, a board member here as well. And I think I shared some of this with you all at our last meeting, that in our board meeting prior to that, our last board meeting, now I'm making it really confusing, we kind of sat down and looked at how the last year went with numbers and success, and really felt that the Brainerd Park and Rec baseball, youth baseball program is, for lack of a better term, it's just not salvageable. And we felt like we were not doing service to what our goal was when we started our association, was to enhance competitive youth baseball for all kids in our community. And we just felt like we had to make a decision on, our end goal was to combine youth baseball for our community. And we seen that as something that was a few years out. But with what we witnessed over the last year, we think, our thought was we have to make a move now, or it's just gone. And with that being said, Derek, I'll turn it over to you, and you can.
Perfect, thank you.
explain.
Yeah, I think we have all met at some point or another, but I'm Derek Owen, and standing here as Vice Chairman of the Brainerd Lakes Area Baseball Association. And with Troy Reason being the president, you think you could have put us as A on the agenda? 'Cause, but anyway, no poll there. We wanted to talk to you. We'll back up just a little bit. In the spring, early spring of 2018 is when we got together. There's a small group of us that started talking about having a baseball association in Brainerd because one didn't exist. There was a travel program that Troy headed up, kind of took the bull by the horns on his own to have a travel program. I think, I don't know, Troy, maybe 11U, 12U, but he took that all the way along the ranks, but there wasn't a true association like Baxter had, a travel program. I grew up in the Brainerd Parks and Rec program when it was flourishing, but Baxter didn't exist. Obviously, that was why, right? All the numbers were in Brainerd. And then, as you guys know, I know you saw the numbers of the decline, but the whole goal of BLABA was to give opportunities for kids to play baseball who wouldn't have got them otherwise. And that was even kids that tried out for Baxter that didn't make those travel teams. That means they didn't have any option to play summer baseball outside of the rec program. So we wanted to provide that for them by playing, with our association. So the goal was, again, to just let kids play baseball and have more opportunity to do that. So we started our board, went through that whole fun process of being a nonprofit and getting going, and we have an outstanding board. I think we did everything the right way, and unfortunately, just the numbers weren't there for us either. So in order for our numbers to be there, the rec program needed to be strong as well, and we thought maybe we could help each other with those numbers, but it just wasn't happening. And even from the get-go, just from me personally, where were those numbers going to come from? We had to steal them back. That's the right word to use. We had to get them back from Baxter. And if we strip down what I just said there, what are we really trying to do? Take kids back that go to school with the same kids or in the same school district? Like, that's not what we want. We need cohesiveness. We need this to be one program. And Tony just listing off what community ed does, which for people who don't understand and hear that Brainerd Community Ed runs the Baxter baseball program, sets off a question mark usually with most people, like, why does that happen, or how is that even possible, and all that kind of stuff. But the list that he just went through, they have their stuff together. You know, it's community ed. My son plays basketball. There's a Brainerd Basketball Association, right? That's all run differently, and it's all run together, though. And so the bottom line is, you know, it's not always about winning. I know that, right? We know that as teaching kids, and we gave opportunity to 2 teams last summer, a 13U and a 14U travel team. I coached the 13U team myself, and we actually, in order to field that team, had to pull up kids who just turned 12. So they were almost playing kids 2 years older. And we were playing in AAA tournaments, which is the highest level for 13U. And it wasn't pretty, to be honest. It was a learning experience. Did they get to play more baseball? Yeah, they did. We talked about it at our board meeting. We still accomplished what we wanted to out of those 2 teams. We gave them the opportunity to play more baseball. But overall, you know, we've heard some things on the Baxter side of they don't have enough fields to practice on, and you know, they have a lot of good coaching over there, and we're like, how do we get good coaches? Well, a lot of times that's a parent and their kid already plays baseball over there. That's where the good coaches are. So we feel that we have a lot to offer to them, and of course they do to us. And it's even a struggle when we talk about this Brainerd-Baxter situation. It's one program. It's the Brainerd ISD 181. I was a freshman baseball coach last year. I'm a sophomore baseball coach this year. I'm going to get all those kids together at one point for school baseball who maybe never played together because they were in different programs. And you put out a better product when you're playing with kids, and you get the opportunity to play a lot of games together and grow together, and as a whole, Brainerd will put out a better product. So as a board, we feel like I said, we meet monthly. We have a lot. We did our fundraising. We really did, I think, a class act job from the board perspective. And they really don't have much of a board. We had a few other people come over when we had our introduction of our organization, and they weren't sure who was on their board or if they even had one. And so there's a little, miscommunication outside where we feel like that's where, from a travel program perspective, we could really help their travel program. Now, I know I'm talking from a travel baseball perspective and not the rec league, but they need to go hand in hand. So for a long time, if you played rec baseball in Brainerd, you can't play travel baseball for Baxter, and vice versa. They couldn't come over and play with us. We did make some changes this year where there's a fee, to do that, but we really want to see cohesiveness, and Troy touched on that a little bit too, and I think the time is now. We talked as a board that we can't, if nothing happens, we can't move forward as our association, because the product's not, the numbers aren't there. We don't have the kids to play travel ball, to put out a decent team, and to not have to pull people or ask people to play when it's supposed to be a tryout. You made this team type situation, and we were begging people to play. So we'd like to see just bigger numbers. For example, in 13U, there's AAA, AA, single A. So if that's all together, we should be able to field at least 2 of those teams. If they didn't make that AAA team, they're on a AA team, etc. But there's teams, there's opportunities for kids to play more baseball. So I think too, like I said, with the decline in the rec numbers, I think if they play together, they have more fields, and I know I'm getting in the weeds with that'll be worked out later, but maybe they pay to use the Brainerd fields and so on, and just most associations are run this way in the state. Troy's done a lot of research on that. We are kind of an anomaly where we're run through our Parks and Rec program. Most of this is done through an association. So I do feel that standing here, there's a sense of urgency. A lot of our board meetings have been a little stalemated because we don't know what to do moving forward either, because we need to find out going to happen with our baseball program. So I meant to lead by this too, and I just want to say thank you guys for your service on the park board. So yeah, I know it's been discussed. This isn't a surprise. Like I said, I know you guys have looked at numbers and seen what's happening there, and I just think it'll be a stronger and more cohesive, united, front where all the kids are playing together and they're all getting that opportunity. So, does anybody have any questions about the association? Yeah, Kevin, go ahead.
So like with City Ball, kids sign up and they all get a play, they all make it on a team. Is that the same with your association, or do you guys cut?
Well, we begged people, no, but we would, you're right, from a travel perspective, there would be, depending on the numbers, there would be a cut from a travel program. So, for instance, if this was a combined and we have numbers, we would be putting together, like I said, here's our 13U AAA team and a AA team, depending on skill levels. But yeah, that is a cut situation. Rec ball's not. You're throwing on a team no matter what. So, like I mentioned, there's a few kids that did not make the Baxter travel program they're good ball players that just, how do you get better? You got to play more, right? And even in their rec programs, what's happening a lot too is there's some travel kids, or they have teams where most of the travel kids are playing. So I have a nephew that plays over there, and he was always playing in the outfield because the travel kids played in the infield. So he never you're not giving kids opportunities to play other positions and learn the game of baseball. They're young, right? Everybody should have an opportunity to play different, positions and things like that. So, but yeah, in a travel program, it is, like I said, it's meant to be an elite situation, right? Where I keep saying that word product, we're representing Brainerd when we go to a tournament. And I don't know, I can't remember what my number was, but 13U, we got outscored like 108-3 in the 3 tournaments that we were in. And it's not good. I mean, the kids, we still had fun, but we're putting a product out. It's Brainerd, and that's what, people's perspective was of the Brainerd baseball program, is what we put on the field there. And I don't think that's a fair representation of our community.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I've been coaching for 22, 23 years, coaching travel ball for 10 plus years. But I did it on my own. I just went out and did it on my own. There was an association. So as Derek said, we are an anomaly. We basically stand alone in the state of Minnesota as far as our baseball program, of not having an association that manages the competitive baseball for the community. And we spent a tremendous amount of hours putting together our handbook and our bylaws to make sure that we had a classy, fair program that focused on kids and skills and making them successful. The other part of that is there's a lot of discussion through all of this with us is these are our future community members. These are our future kids who are involved. They're not all going to stay here, but some leave, come back, some stay. And what we have done and what we're trying to do is to not just teach baseball, but teach life skills and character and sportsmanship. And with all that said, that's why we approached Joe Pokamp a few months ago from the Baxter program and said, we need to bring this all together. This needs to be a community thing. I brought up I've been coaching for a long time. The other part of that is I watch our kids when they get to the 8th grade level where they combine with the Baxter kids, and Derek calls it putting together a good product. They don't mesh. It takes them years, and even by the time they reach varsity level, they're not the same product as a community where the kids are playing together from 9 years old. It's not. I can see it. But that's where we want to get to. And we want to bring this together as a community thing versus a Baxter thing and a Brainerd thing. And Tony, you had mentioned that we kind of went nowhere, but did not Corey Reynolds mention that she was working on a proposal?
She was looking at a proposal for all of our programs, is the impression I got. I was reading that email as that she was, kind of took the whole thing a little out of context as far as, we're looking at just baseball. And the impression I got from her was that she was looking at all of the programs, which I had not discussed with her.
Yeah, and so I don't know where this goes, and I don't, but we just feel like something different has to be done. And I think we felt that, you know, if we wait, it's just gonna fall
If we
apart.
don't, I think if we don't do anything, it's going to happen anyway, that the baseball program is going to dissolve over there. So this is our opportunity to not say that we failed as a Parks and Rec program for baseball, but as it was an opportunity to merge, not as we failed and we needed to be saved, if you will. But a merging opportunity, I think, is how this really needs to be approached. And you know what? It's simple things as even talking about the name. If the travel program's Baxter, or is it Brainerd Baxter? We'd like to see it Brainerd, of course, because of the ISD 181 situation. But that was something we had to assess as a board. The bottom line is if this merger happens, and I think it's the right thing to do. Our board, the Blabo board, 100% is on board with this merger, or this needs to take place. And I will just say too, Tony, I don't know, I would open that up to you guys as a board of why not consider other programs being taken on by Brainerd Community Ed. Maybe you don't have to address that right now.
When I did talk with Corey and Joe, I did say, you know, if we combined the baseball programs, we would still, because there'd be more kids, we'd need more fields. I said I would still want games played in Brainerd.
Right.
There would still be practices. I mean, it'd be open, both towns would be open to the program. So the Bain Park, for example, would not be sitting idle.
Right.
I gotta get going because I gotta pick up my kid, but just throw in my 2 cents real quick. You've gotta understand the financial implications of this, in that right now, we are paying for fields, and that continues to exist. We are also paying for Tony, and we are also paying for Katie to run programs. There's a financial aspect of this, and I still have questions about how that agreement works with Baxter, because I just don't understand how you're kind of just throwing money and continually throwing money, because you're gonna have to fix the fields, you're gonna have to fix the fences, you're gonna have to fix the dugouts. You're maintaining the fields on a weekly basis or nightly basis in some cases. But there is also the aspect of these, are we taking it away and saying we are just creating it as a way of funding kids to have activities? So there's 2 ways to look at it, but you're going to have to understand the financial implications of the whole thing, because it's a much different model than what we're using right now. And I will say that I don't blame her for saying all programs, because that's where this is going to lead. I think you also need to understand that as well. If you move your baseball program into that type of agreement, what's the point of not having them run all your programs? Because you're going to have 2 separate types of fund or ways of paying for your programs. You're going to have 2 sets of people operating everything. You're just going to be meshing a lot of stuff. So this is not a decision to take lightly, but it's also one that we've got to sit down with the actual financial end of things and look at how it's going to play out. And with that, I got to go.
Yeah, and just to touch a little bit on what Dave said there, like from the travel program, I mean, again, this is in the details later, but we envision the revenue perspective is we're paying for any field that we're on. That's how that works. If we have a tournament at Bain, we're paying Brainerd for the use of that field, or we're paying Baxter for the use of that field. So that's how most associations are run.
How most associations run. They do some research, and the city or the park board says we need this much per season, and they pay a flat rate for using the fields and for having the fields maintained. We're looking at this, that Blaba would still be a separate entity, but would partner, if you will, with
Baxter, yep.
with Community Ed.
And Community Ed, yeah.
So, and I don't know what comes of this presentation here, other than I think we need to push more with Baxter and find out some of these answers. Well, obviously, we can't wait for them to meet twice a year. I don't think they have a board. To have a board, you have to, I mean, there's criteria that you have to stand, you know, you have your bylaws, you have to meet your bylaws, and I don't think, they don't have a baseball board.
Tony, you were saying that you thought that this Camp was going to be putting together some type of a proposal?
I got the impression that Corey Reynolds would be,
Brandon, okay.
yeah.
So if that were to happen, could we have her come to our next meeting with that document so we can dissect it or, get an idea of what it is that they look at? And, because there sounds like there's a lot more discussion that needs to be done for sure before we make any decisions, but, to get it off center, maybe she should come and give her perspective and proposal, and then we can look at that. Maybe that'll give us some other ideas that we can look at.
Could we also maybe try to, like, say, myself and a board member, try to meet with Corey and one of their board members and sit down and say, so it's face-to-face, say, here's what we're looking at, instead of any possible confusion and translation, so to speak. Because we're going to have to make a decision pretty darn quick, because,
Yeah. No, I think that's a good idea myself.
But it would not hurt to have some
Oh, yeah,
information
at the same
from
time, yeah,
from them
give
at
more
the same
clarification,
time, I
but
agree.
I think Tony's right that it would really help to have some groundwork done so that we're not reinventing her thoughts. We have some general idea from Tony's perspective and a board's perspective.
Are you wanting this for 2020? So like, when does registration open for baseball?
January 2nd, basically. I mean, most don't do any registering until late March, early April, but our program guides go out in late March.
Has anybody seen that guidebook that the school puts out for all the sports?
Oh.
We're in the back.
Okay.
And Baxter Baseball, same program. Baxter program's in the front because it's community ed. So it's just a head scratcher.
The Brainerd and Nisswa programs get put in the back, and the community ed ones are in the front.
Because it's community ed.
Because it's community ed.
Yeah. And I'd do the same thing if they asked to be in our program. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. That's good.
So,
So if we,
So more to
do we
come?
need a motion? Or do you want to just pick somebody to go with you to?
If someone would want to volunteer, I could try to set up a meeting with Corey and see if one of their board members, or Joe, whoever, would be on it.
well, I obviously would volunteer to do that. So I don't know that we need a motion at this point,
No.
is that, I just think we need further action to be able to bring something back here.
Yeah.
To have something a little more concrete to look at, to help us make decisions as a park board.
And I think Joe is, or not Joe, Dave is correct, and the finances is huge. Because the city of Baxter, I believe last year they paid community ed $35,000 essentially to run their programs.
Right. And plus they had to maintain the fields.
Right,
Yeah,
correct.
that's a lot.
And so I'd hate to join up with them and then all of a sudden get a bill and saying, hey, you owe us X amount of money, so we need to clarify things like that.
Yep.
That's for all programs though, correct? That wasn't just baseball.
That was all the
That's for
programs.
that's.
Entire
all
program.
That's all
Yeah.
programs.
That's everything, yeah. Yeah, that's not just baseball.
Sounds like our baseball program doesn't have a whole lot of leverage here.
No,
No.
no, the last few years has been a real struggle, be totally blunt about it. And how do you start getting it back? How do you swing it back? I mean,
If they combine, will there be enough usage that they will have to use our fields?
Oh, yes,
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
yeah.
Like I said before, they've been practicing just out in random fields for their travel, wherever they can find, because there's no fields.
Well, their angle is fields, potentially being able to get to the field usage, correct?
Yeah, that would be something we'd bring to the table, is they'd have more opportunity for practice fields and playing fields, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Derek.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good
Thanks.
Thanksgiving.
Thanks for waiting for the first hour.
We'll remember next time A.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to coordinate something to set up, and
Okay.
kind of need to know your work hours and all that too, so.
Okay,
And our next meeting is December 16th, or 16th or 17th.
Couple of weeks, yeah.
Yeah, it's an early one.
I have all next week off,
Oh, okay, all right,
evenings, yeah, so
yep, okay,
anything late in the day next week.
okay,
I'll get you my schedule.
all right.
Okay, we can move on to seasonal pay, new business and 2020 seasonal pay rates.
Okay, starting January 1st, the minimum wage for large employers, which the city of Brainerd is, goes from $9.65 to $10 an hour. I attached a proposed pay rate for 2020. You'll notice the starred ones, the park board has already agreed to. In youth baseball, youth softball, and pond hockey, the officials, I'm proposing a $2 a game raise. And for other temporary seasonal workers, I put a range in there, for example, $11 to $14 an hour. And that is because we've had some people they come back year after year after year, and we didn't think it was right that they were still stuck at the same low rate, that they should maybe get a 25 or 50 cent an hour raise, depending on the number of years they worked for us. So that is kind of what I'm proposing, and any discussion?
So we already did the adult softball, correct? But some of
Yes.
the rest of this we have not, okay.
Yeah, adult softball and the baseball tournament umpires, we've already approved those increases. The $45 for the state tournament, that is paid by the state and
Right.
set by the state.
But we've already turned in our budget, which would be part of this, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But not all of these are reflected in the budget that we turned in.
No, but I'm thinking that, if you look at our programs, revenue does exceed expenditures.
Right.
And for each program, it depends on the program, but there's really not that many hours that they actually work for the program. It's like they meet twice a week for 8 weeks, and it's usually an hour program type of thing, or 2 hours, depending on how many kids we've got. And so it's probably gonna maybe at the most amount to maybe $100 a program or something.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask you,
Yeah.
is what these
Yeah.
adjustments as a whole will affect our overall budget for an entire year?
Not very much, 'cause a lot of them will be at the $11 an hour range.
Right.
But as anybody knows, talking to business owners in town, it's getting harder and harder and harder to find people, and the rates keep going up and up, so. Trying to be somewhat competitive.
And legally, you have to be that high, just about.
And what?
Legal, you almost have to be that high with the state.
Well, we do have to be at $10
Close to it,
minimum. Yeah.
So you're looking for a motion to approve?
Approve the pay rates for 2020, yeah.
So any idea, how much would it be total, Tony? I mean, what are we looking at?
That I don't have for you. It all depends on, say someone's starting out and they're gonna get $11 an hour. As opposed to, say someone's been with us a long time and they're getting $13 an hour. Type of thing. I don't have an overall total for you.
We have time on this, right? Because our budget's already submitted, this is all before next year, so you
Yeah.
could hypothetically get back to us on what you think the total number is, or might be?
I could bring it back December 16th, no question, or at the next park board meeting.
Yeah, because with,
I could break
with
down
the
by
rinks, with the rinks
program.
being,
Or just,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's,
the
Yeah.
rinks will open
One
about
we're
the
talking
same
about
time the
here,
next park
50
board
grand.
meeting is at, supposedly, if everything falls into place.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to have financial money put aside to make sure you can pay the temporary employees to work at the rinks and referee hockey games, whatever.
Yeah, they'd be at the old rate until
Till the
January
first of the year.
1st. Yeah,
and obviously that's on the ones that we haven't approved, the ones we've already approved, that's done, so.
yeah,
We don't need the,
yeah, yeah.
And how do you, sorry, I might have missed this when I was gone, but how do you determine if they get 11 or 14? So do you work like 1 year, and then the second year you get 12, and then, or
No,
do you
no,
get to
we'd probably go like 25 cents the next year or 50 cents
Oh.
increase. Yeah,
Oh,
they wouldn't
okay.
make
So
the
it's not
full
a
big
dollar.
jump.
So they have to wait until they're 80 before
Yeah.
they get to $14.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unless you're an
Right.
umpire, and then you go from 24 to 30 in one fell swoop.
But there are a couple long-time employees that have been working
Well,
for us
sure,
in the
and
summers.
they should get that then,
Yeah.
if they're good, you know,
Yeah, that's why we keep asking them back, yep.
yeah.
But yeah, I can bring up those numbers at the next meeting.
Moving on to tournament requests. This one's for Hop, is that what that is?
Oh, yes, yep. This one's for Hop. Enclosed are the financials from the 2019 tournament that he hosted, and he is also requesting the use of Memorial Park again for July 11th and 12th, 2020. And they've been running the tournament with us for years, so.
I'll make a motion to approve that request.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Does he have to pay?
Yes,
Yes?
yeah,
Okay.
he does pay a field usage fee.
Okay.
Yep.
Just-
And to be honest, we could use another dozen of these tournaments, because it's fantastic, so.
I'll second.
Uh,
Oh, sorry? I thought
Okay,
you were
you
done.
can.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna second it.
You kids stop
That's all.
fighting, please?
I retract my second, so you
Oh.
can say.
Did you have further discussion, Gary?
No, I was gonna second it, and he stole my second.
Fine.
Okay, so we have a third.
Feel terrible.
Third.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we can move on to around the parks.
Okay,
City administrator in there first.
Oh, yep.
Wants to.
City administrator reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm standing between you and supper, not a good place to be. I'll make it quick. Thank you for the opportunity to be of service to the city of Brainerd for this short time. I'm glad to hear some of the things that are going on. You've got your big decision to make over at Lum Park. You've got some wonderful things that are happening and likely going to happen out of Memorial Park. These are good things. When I heard the discussion about the sharing between Baxter and Brainerd about baseball, brought me back to when I lived in Moorhead back in the early to mid 80s when I was working as Clay County administrator. At that time, you couldn't talk to anybody in Fargo about anything, nor would Fargo come across to talk to Moorhead about anything in the public sector. You couldn't talk to Cass County, North Dakota. They couldn't talk to Clay County, Minnesota. There was a brick wall coming out of the Red River in the north. We didn't share things. We didn't talk about things. We're going to take care of us, you take care of you. Lo and behold, what happened a number of years down the road, this would have been in the, maybe mid-90s, latter 90s, City of Fargo, City of Moorhead, Cass County, North Dakota, Clay County, Minnesota, put together one dispatch center for police purposes. They crossed the river, they came to their senses about how to do services, and they said, and even West Fargo, what's the next town down the road from Moorhead? Anyway, they all said, it's too expensive for the public to have all these things flying around with independent outfits. Let's get together, let's have one deal, and so when you call for a fire truck in Moorhead, they're going to answer it, and you're going to get one from Moorhead. You call for a fire truck in West Fargo, they answer it, you're going to get a fire truck to you. That's called working together. That's called putting things in place where you can have an economy of scale. And I know emergency services is not the same as a baseball team. I get it, because there are other things you got to factor in. But these boundaries that we have on paper sometimes cause us an awful lot of problems. And so the more we can open up our minds to possibilities in any community, I think our citizens are better served. That's who we're working for. That 10-year-old kid that wants to play baseball, I don't think he cares whether it's from Baxter or Brainerd or what. Just get me on a ball field, get me a glove and a ball, and let me hit and let me get coached. That's all they want. I don't know if I make it any simpler, because I'm an old ball player too. I got a crooked finger, I got a bad knee, I'm a catcher for 14 years, whatever it was. I loved it. But I didn't care who paid for what, and I didn't know who paid for what. Just let me play baseball. I loved it. Anyway, so that's the end of my sermon, and I'm going to get out of here to go have supper. Okay. Thank you much.
All right,
Yep.
thank you. Thank you. And director's report.
Okay. Well, winter's going to hit us probably before we walk out the door here, so we're hoping to probably start flooding rinks next Monday, being that the temperatures look like they're going to go down and stay down. So that's being spoken. The adult pond hockey deadline is December 13th. League play begins January 7th at Bain Park. The registration deadline for youth pond hockey is December 20th. Equipment handout will be from 10 to 11 a.m. on December 21st at Mill Avenue Park Warming House, and practices will begin January 2nd. The Santa Paws event will be from, I believe it's noon to 1 o'clock on December 14th at Buster Park, and dogs can have their pictures taken with Santa.
A bald Santa?
A bald Santa, yes, yes.
Here's a treat for you.
And, okay, and, rough job. It's gonna be a rough one, yes.
Wet boots to me.
I hope nobody, none of the dogs look at me as a T-bone steak, you know. Sorry, my brothers call me T-bone. All right, Brainerd Lakes Area Women Today donated $400 from their concession sales from the Great Pumpkin Fest. Thank you, Kim. Nice. And they earmarked the funds to be used towards the purchase of a security camera for the pavilion at the new warming house at Gregory Park. So we're thinking on putting one under the pavilion roof so it shines on the picnic table area. So
Nice.
and then our staff worked with the public utilities. It was on hanging the Christmas swags and stuff downtown and lighting the Christmas tree or stringing the lights on the Christmas tree on the corner of 6th and Laurel. And FYI, on this Saturday at 5 o'clock, they will have the official tree lighting ceremony down there,
It's beginning to look.
which makes our maintenance foreman very nervous because if they don't go on, they don't go on. You know, so,
Clark W. Griswold.
yeah, yep. So he's down there earlier in the day checking them, making sure and they
About
work.
100 times,
Yeah, yeah,
making sure.
yeah.
110,000 scummy lights.
Yeah. So, and then just a reminder, we're going to have a earlier meeting next December, or in December. I think it's the 16th, isn't it, Kim? Do you remember? Whatever that
Probably.
Tuesday is. So,
17th,
and that's the one meeting you don't want to miss.
and we're going to be here again, correct?
17th.
Yes. It's a goodies. So,
Make something?
Okay,
I don't remember last year.
that's it from me.
Will you bring
any further
something?
discussion?
Yeah, it's the 17th.
The 7th.
Okay, good.
17th?
We have a motion to adjourn.
You're gonna miss.
So moved.
A motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
Oh, second.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Um,
Meeting is adjourned.
wait,
I made the motion.
oh, yeah, okay. I just heard it.
Gail always wants the motion
I
first.
did. You did? Yep, got my second in. Got it.
Never going to second a motion until I make eye contact with you.
I'll let you this time.
Are your kids done fighting now, so you can?
Blessing. Pass.